Today on Six String Therapy, we're going to talk about Afro Latinidad, Afro Latinos. And from my perspective, being in Puerto Rico right now and looking at it through a different lens, and there are racial issues here for sure, but there's such a huge culture of mestiza, mix of people, because I see so many more people who look like me, mixed descendant, mixed race. So hello from Puerto Rico. Peace. I'm DJ MayDay.
And I'm Professor S, your psychotherapist to the stars.
AKA bearer of the Mind Stone.
Oh, okay.
What
are you the bearer of? The no Mind Stone. The empty Mind Stone.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Thank you very much.
So today's episode.
Today's episode we're going to talk about something. We've tried to do this episode 2 other times.
Yes.
Unsuccessful. All right. So
why was it unsuccessful?
Because it kind of hits home in a very weird way.
Yes.
So today we're going to be talking about Afro Latinidad or Afro Latinos. So that's
what it is, what it means to you,
how it impacts.
Because I'll be asking like some questions directly to the newly minted Afro Latino.
Well,
it's a discussion.
It's definitely a discussion. It's ongoing discussion, an evolving discussion. But
right.
Just to frame the topic, Afro Latino, what does that mean? That means basically African descended people in Latin American countries, basically.
That's pretty cool.
So, based on that, like being Afro Latino or
Latinx?
Well, Latinx is different.
What do you mean? Afro Latino or being what? What's the alternative words?
There are no alternative words.
So what you say?
I don't know.
You want to read a formal
no,
description?
I do not. This is part of like our personal.
So basically, what I was exploring with DJ MayDay was what is an Afro. We got into a conversation. I said, "Well, aren't you Afro Latino?" And he was like, "What? What are you talking about?
No,
Afro Latino?
Don't do that.
What did you say?
I didn't say that.
You didn't say what am I talking
about?
No,
I didn't say that.
You said but I don't want to be part of the division. What are you talking about? So maybe I used the wrong word. What are you talking about?
Can I?
Go ahead.
Just a second.
Okay.
Can I preference this all
of course.
On my personal beliefs before we go any further?
Yeah,
I think it's kind of key and important.
Absolutely.
So the way I don't personally believe in race. Like I don't think it exists, and I have reasons for that, and maybe we'll go into that a little bit. I don't believe in race, and I don't subscribe to monikers or names or being put into a category. That's just my personal beliefs. Mm-hmm. So, it took me a long time, almost 50 years, to kind of come to the conclusion of who I am and what I am. Mm-hmm. So
I'm sorry about to laugh. This is such a serious subject. So
it's not. It's
some of this out.
Yeah, no,
it's important.
It's very debated. It's very debated. And Professor S, Steven has brought a lot of stuff to light and a lot of things to consider. And I think it's an ongoing thing. It's not necessarily, for me personally, it's not finalized.
It's all about identity, and identity is always evolving.
Right. So I think the first time we tried it, we just tried it in audio, and it was just too chaotic and too angry. Yeah. And then the second time, I was literally sitting here angry, thinking about it.
Yeah.
So I would like to kind of I spent the last maybe less than a year kind of since we did that episode kind of peeling back and kind of thinking further on why I angry about it. Mm-hmm. And some of the reasons I was angry about it is, like I prefaced in the beginning, was that I don't believe in categories or being put in a box or name, monikers, whatever it's called. I just don't like it because I feel like, in order to conquer people, you need to separate them.
Separate them and divide.
Right. So I just never liked that concept. Did you want that?
Well, I mean,
I think this is so loaded for us because we go back and forth.
no, because I just want to talk.
Right.
See, that's the thing. I just want to talk about it. So I don't know how to make it flow. But my question is, what does Afro Latino mean to you? We've talked about what Afro Latino is. Like, it's somebody of Latin descent, of African descent, but of the Americas too, right? So you go into your South, North America, Spain, etc., Brazil. There's a Latin background, but then you have the added identity of slaves that were sent to these different areas. In fact, more slaves were sent to South America than to the States.
Yes.
So
and I think that's another aspect of that people somehow, I don't know how this happened in the United States, but like Spanish people have like this kind of look, like they all look like this kind of one way, dark, olive skin,
straight hair,
dark hair,
looking.
a little bit, or a little bit like Indian looking, or but that's like who they are. I always tell people who don't really understand it, like just imagine if in the United States everyone spoke Spanish. We have a lot of
the range is there.
Yeah, we have a lot of range of people here.
Right.
And it's
so
kind of
folks who blonde hair, blue eyes speak Spanish, and there's people my complexion speak Spanish. So that's So yeah, just imagine America where everybody speaks Spanish. That's the diversity, right?
Yes.
But I think in terms of our discussion today is the idea of the African heritage that a lot of Latinos are embracing, and it doesn't necessarily mean that if I define myself as Afro-Latino, it doesn't mean I'm dividing my identity. It's actually a term that integrates one's identity. But like you said, if you don't believe, if you have all these lines and defining this against that, then it could see being problematic. But I think it's a way of people reclaiming aspects of their identity as opposed to creating more separation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a lot to say for that. And I think I don't want to say the trend to, but I mean, African Americans, especially since the Civil War, have been, reclaiming their Africanness, as a whole. Not everyone buys in, not everybody, but as a whole, they've been reclaiming their Africanness. So I think that trend led by Black Americans has also trickled into the Latin world, culture and world and around the world really. But I think how it relates to us, it's definitely impacted the Latin world. And I think that, that's wonderful, beautiful, and great. You know what I mean? But I also understand that the way slavery panned out here and the way it panned out in Latin America, both equally cruel, both equally unjust, and in that sense is virtually the same. But there were differences afterwards. You know what I mean? There were differences, and I think this is where we kind of like stumble a little bit and like kind of get into conflict about it.
But I think the bottom line is the slave trade dropped off Africans throughout Latin America, North America, and the Caribbean. So there's an African diaspora throughout Latin American and Spanish-speaking countries in North America, South America, and the Caribbean. So the idea is folks claiming or reclaiming, because the let's get into it. I think that's where we kind of got into like debates and stuff. In a lot, and somebody from another country, which I love to say every now and then, right, from another country, so it kind of helps.
Yeah. Whenever it's convenient.
Right, when it's convenient, but coming from another country, which is the UK, and seeing some of these divisions, like people that were like my complexion and not calling themselves Black, that were Spanish speaking, I didn't quite understand what that meant, but as I grew to understand more about, especially culturally, that a lot of times that being Black is associated with different things in different cultures. But one of the main things that I got culturally is that anything of the African ancestry was looked to kind of lighten out of families. Like you lighten up your family by marrying lighter women or men, having lighter children. So the idea that being, full lips or broader nose or having a certain hair texture is looked down upon, even with the families that may have a variety of complexions of children and so on. So when I was looking at documentaries about it, one of the things that was a common theme is that, let's say within a family, if the person, let's say, looked my complexion, had my hair texture and so on, but yet my brother or my cousin were of a more Europeanized looking person, they would be given a certain either preferential treatment or be considered as pretty or handsome. So there's this message that if you're African, if there's African in you, we don't want to necessarily see it too strongly. And so what the Afro Latino experience has been, based upon what I've learned or what I've grown to understand, is reclaiming that. Like, I'm not just a Spanish speaking person. There's African in my heritage, there's African in my skin, my hair, my music is there, but the culture subconsciously and consciously says that if you're of African descent or you can see it, then that's problematic. So a lot of folks are beginning to embrace that I am both. I am Spanish speaking of my culture, and there is also African in my culture. Do not suppress that aspect of me because you don't like it, or grandma don't like it, or dad don't like it, or whoever. The culture, the messages that they get throughout Africa, throughout Latin America, the messages are that if you're, it's a thing in the
well, this is where the nerves get touched, like an open wound, right? Like, so yes. I had to, when he would say shit like that, and I'm like, but we love each other, you know what I mean? And I would really get in my bag about how I felt about these things, but it took me time to realize, well, yeah, there were things, and and I'm about in the middle of the spectrum in my family. I have really light people and I have darker people in my family. So, I'll put a picture of like my grandparents, so you can kind of see like it's really all over the place. The genetics was like they were really kind of folded into each other, so it just would sprout up.
Right.
The whiteness, light eyes, or the blackness, dark skin, or curly, fine curly hair. So it's really hard at Thanksgiving to kind of sit from, across from each other and hate on each other. So, but talking to you, both things can be true, right?
Both things can be true.
So that's the kind of thing. You can love each other
and also be prejudicial within each other.
Right. So, after kind of realizing that to kind of be true, because of course we love each other. We give our lives to each other.
Right.
But there were things, and I attribute all that to the racist kind of, structure that's been set forth, that's been around for hundreds of years, and less to do with like, them as human beings. You know what I mean? They're prey to the same things we are. You know what I mean? Like they feel those same racial pressures all around them, one way or the other. If they're lighter, they feel the pressure to maintain their status or whatever.
Even if you're since we're talking about more Latino communities, but I think this goes with any communities of color or where there was colonization, that if you're closer to the European aesthetic, then that is considered attractive and therefore more privileged. So that gets replicated throughout, Caribbean,
especially in the past.
Latinos.
Especially in the past.
Like you say in the past?
In the past, like in the recent 50 years or so. Because even in my house, like a lot of the things that my mother was trying to do is like her broken English, she didn't want us to speak Spanish.
Right.
So she was already from rip, like she was like, all right, you gotta get with the program.
That's something I learned too from being, especially being in high school and talking to some of my friends who are Latino, and how a lot of the parents, which I realized also was the whole immigrant experience, right? If you're Italian, if you're Greek or whatever, to try to not have the accent, so you have more access.
So they can't peg you or pinpoint you.
Right.
So I mean, just that fact that she would say that all the time, and then
to assimilate.
Yeah, to assimilate.
No, you're a simulation. We're talking about assimilating. I know.
So like a lot of things that Professor S. Steven would say to me would be like it would force me to really rethink like what really happened.
Right.
So it was painful. It was painful, and he was right. A lot of the things that he was saying was right, but but I came to the conclusion, like I said, both things can be true. Right. They can love you, but they can also have certain feelings about your I don't even know.
Your look.
Your look, yeah.
You're a brown person.
Yeah.
And you know what? There was something. I'm sorry, going off on a tangent a bit, but I saw something on TV, and they said something about when you're in the street, what are people seeing, right? So like, even though I may speak Spanish, right? If I look like this, you're seeing a black man.
Yeah.
If you're on the street, what are they seeing?
It depends.
Exactly.
It depends. See, that's the thing with being like more racially ambiguous. Like, I can't go to Europe and just say I'm European. I could say I'm European, but they're gonna know it's.
They'll probably put you into like North African.
Yeah, some other class of person, right?
Right.
And then I'm not black enough to be just black. So it's a very different experience. Right, you know what I mean? Like it's not the black experience.
It's so interesting because it's a blessing and a curse to look like this, because people
Call
can say
it a curse.
People can say because people can say, okay, he's black, you know, or somebody
that's a designation.
But then you have people that say, well, I'm not black enough, and I'm not, you know, white enough, and I'm comfortable in this area. You know, people see me as this, people see me as that. So there's the whole racial divide. But the thing is when people see you in the street, how would they?
I've been called everything from black to Arab to Samoan to everything. I mean, literally Dominican, Puerto Rican, Cuban. Like they kind of see what they want to see.
Right.
Almost.
Right. Exactly.
So it's like because it's kind of like it's racially ambiguous.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you don't have it's hard to pinpoint like where you're coming from.
Right.
So that's like. I'm good with that. I actually like that because I can get in some places, but some places I can't. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know.
Okay, that's going to open up a whole nother conversation. But anyway,
what do you mean?
No, because someplace I will not be able to access because I look like this.
Right.
Or I maybe have a harder time accessing it. It also depends on how I'm viewing it too.
And I've been called the N-word. You know, a few times in my life, and I'm like, but wait, I'm not black. Like, you know, but it don't matter. It's like depending on the person.
It's how you're read.
Yeah, it depends on the person and how they, whatever it's going on with them.
How they pigeonhole you. Yeah.
Exactly. So like
division.
Right, and I just naturally don't belong to a group. In that sense, so like I've always kind of railed against the structure of it because of that.
Right.
You know, I don't really belong there. Like I really can't hate on Europeans because I know like there's like more than 25% of my genetics. I can't hate on black because I know for sure that's at least 25% of my genetics, and even Indian.
And the rest is Irish.
Yeah, like what are you gonna do? Like so I can't really. Where does someone like that go?
And that's the thing. That's why we're talking about this, right? Because it brings up all these thoughts and feelings. And just as another example, I remember when I was working as a social worker, and I worked for a school program, and the program that I worked for, we were in different schools.
Right.
So one of the schools that I had to do a presentation in was in Brooklyn, and it was the first time that I was in a school that was predominantly black and predominantly Spanish speaking. And I had never seen that before. All the kids were in hip hop gear and everything, and folks were just speaking Spanish all over the place. And I was like, wow, you know, but one of the staff members was Dominican. He looked my complexion, spoke Spanish. So he totally understood what I was trying to like grasp. But I think that was the first time that I realized, okay, there are folks that look like me that really speak Spanish, and like, you know, what's their lives like, you know, when they're not in the classroom, how do people perceive them? So then as we were talking about Afro Latino identity and so on, it reminded me of that experience, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, like, you kind of go where you
go to fit in. You go where you fit in.
Like there were times that I fit in, you know, strong with like Black Americans, and I just went with the flow. And there was times that I just fit in with the Latinos, and I just got with it. You know what I mean? So it's interesting to be able to play all sides like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting. You know what I mean? But you know, I wasn't Latin enough for a lot of Latin people because my Spanish ain't great, and I'm not, you know, whatever. And then I'm clearly all the way black, so like it's
but yet so it's so interesting because again,
here we go.
This is me coming from another country, and also I'm interested because my major was sociology, right? I'm a therapist by training, and so all these dynamics of how we see ourselves and how society sees you versus how you see yourself. He looks like one of my cousins. He looks like 10 of my cousins.
And vice versa.
So I'm like, okay, but you don't see, but then I understand culturally that can have an influence on how you perceive yourself, right? So that was something that was really odd for me to get when I first came here, because if you look like my cousin, he's black, but then that same person has the same afro, hair texture, same kind of look, but you're not black, and you speak Spanish, so therefore you're definitely not black. So it's that whole, it's the like, fitting you into a
mold.
But also not understanding the culture. I think once I understood the cultural context, then it was easier for me to understand this topic of the Afro Latino, Afro Latina.
Yeah, I'm telling you, like when I hear, no matter who it is, I hear somebody speaking Spanish, I'm like, oh, okay, I understand this, what's going on. I think in America, there's no pun intended, a legitimate black and white,
of course,
like divide and contrast. Whereas in Latin America, not to say that there isn't racism, against black people, Indians, or whatever. I'm just saying it's a little starker in the United States, whereas in Latin America there may be more gradation,
multiple categorization.
Yeah, and there are caste pyramids that they used to draw up. That had a value system of your genetics, your ethnicity, which again I don't believe. I feel funny even saying these things,
but it's real.
Yeah.
The thing is it's manifest in reality. There is a caste system in terms of being lighter, more European, in terms of how you look, and then being more African in how you look, and therefore what opportunities are available.
Right, but even the way you just said it just now.
What's that?
You said white and African.
More European.
Right, and in my mind, you completely left out Indian. And in my mind, it's like I feel like you can't have one without, have any of that without the other, because in Latin America, India, they were the biggest population. So their genetic influence is huge on the whites out there and on the blacks out there, in general. So like for me, there really is
there's a bigger conversation, right?
Yeah.
It's a bigger subject.
So it's harder to even say like, black and white, because it's for me in my mind, it's never really been that, you know what I mean? Like in Puerto Rico and Loíza and in Piones, that it's black, you know what I mean? And then you go west to the country, closer to Ponce, there's parts of it that are like very Indian, like Indio, like you could see the Indian,
features
in the people,
hair, skin color.
Yeah, and it's a small island, but it's still there. So it's
the variety is there, yeah.
You know what I mean? And of course the white sprinkled throughout, but.
And I guess the way I worded it is because the European colonization was so saturated that's what created the divisions. That's what created, that's what created the caste system, the color system, because it was based on white supremacy. So whatever came under white supremacy would be your indigenous, would be your African, would be other European, et cetera, et cetera. White supremacy was
supreme.
Was the umbrella. Everything fell below that. So it's easy to say white or European and then say black and African, because everything else was also impacted by white supremacy.
Right. So like it's just in my mind. It's just like there's so much to it, and then but here it's very, very like binary.
Very binary.
You know what I mean? So I think also too, like there's a part of African culture in Latin America and in the Caribbean that, for whatever reason, and this is like a mystery that I'm still kind of trying to unravel, it stood. I don't know why, I don't know how it happened, but it stood and it merged into the culture of the country itself, whether it be the Caribbean or even Mexico, or
what
even.
What specifically are you saying?
What I'm saying is the music, the food,
the instruments,
some of the language. For sure, I can speak personally, and on the island of Puerto Rico, for sure, a lot of the African language, trickled and sprinkled into where that felt like it didn't happen here. On some level.
It did though.
But I feel like it.
That's the whole thing around slavery, is that a lot of stuff did stay constant. Some of the music, some of the foods and so on, it was influenced by West Africans. It just doesn't, we're not really talking about that, so I would have done more research.
No, it's just,
but it does trickle
on observation, it's not fact.
No, this facts.
Right.
No, they're facts. What you just said is absolutely, and that's why also when I came to this country and I would watch Latinos, drumming in the park. You know what I mean? It's definitely an African. Oh, you feel it in your bones, right?
Yeah.
And they're speaking Spanish or they're joining other people who are drumming and so on, and you really saw the African power, and everybody that was drumming was of all different colors, all different complexions. But then this is where my brain went like, what? But then in your culture though, you don't want to be associated with Africanness in a certain way. It's almost subconscious.
I think it's more subtle than here.
It's more subtle.
It's more subtle. It's just as ferocious in a sense and damaging, but I think it's more subtle. Okay. Tito Puente could play with Celia Cruz as long as we can, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? Like, we're making money, let's keep it moving, whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't want I'm not saying Tito Puente thought this, but I don't want my grandkids looking like me. You know what I mean? I'm not saying he thought that way.
And even with Celia Cruz, she's like the only one. The Afro Latino. I mean, when you use of prominence, it's like they
she's
chose
the biggest.
one.
There were others.
Yeah, but they chose. But if you was to say Celia Cruz or anybody in Latin America or in Puerto Rico, whatever, Cuba, then I'm coming from the outside. I don't hear anybody as major as Celia Cruz.
Well, Celia Cruz is international.
Right.
I remember I was in Italy. I was in Florence, and we were seeing all this great shit. And then I remember seeing a poster for Tito Puente and Celia Cruz. Mm-hmm. This is when I was in college years ago. And I was like, holy crap, we made it. We out here in fucking Italy. You know what I mean? Like, so like,
So do you want to talk about how it manifests in your family? Is that too close?
That's hairy.
It's too hairy?
That's hairy. I mean, we
in some families.
Yeah, no, we can a little bit. I mean, like, we're Bronxites, and we're, I'm gonna name the big one, and we'll just get it out the way. We're Bronxites, and we throw around the N word, especially back in the day. Not so much now. Now, as I got older, I'm more responsible with that word. I've met a lot of people who've kind of enlightened me a little bit, so I don't just throw that word around. And but back in the day, everybody was throwing it around. You know what I mean? So if you call me that a bunch of times, there's just no way I'm not gonna say it. You know what I mean? And it's part of you. It felt
language,
like,
especially the younger folks.
It's part of our language, our initiation.
Black or Latino,
the only way I could say it is just it showed how close we were. You know what I mean? So black folks call me that, and I'm calling them that, and that's just what it is. You know what I mean? But I had people in my family who would throw that word around with the hard ER on it, and sometimes directed at me.
But not in a pleasant way.
Right. It's a joking.
It's joking, but it's like they're not talking to those that are quote unquote whiter or look more white, white adjacent.
Right. I love the way you danced around that.
Okay, you gotta dance. Got tiptoe, tap, whatever.
So it was.
They're not calling each other the N word.
Right.
They'll throw it towards you.
Right. Even
if it's joking, lighthearted.
Right.
It's not derogatory in that sense, but is used in a way that separates you from your siblings who do not look like they're not brown like you.
Right. So it was.
This is why we argued.
It was a thing because he was like, no one ever did that to you and your family. Being a therapist, he didn't even realize he was digging all the way that deep, but he was. And I'm like, damn, he's right. It did happen.
I've had a couple of clients. I mean, I had one specifically who she was the youngest of like 8 siblings, and she was also the darkest, and she would always have to, fight to get the food and all that because you're the last in the pecking order. That's universal, I think. But it was made very clear that her being dark made her, they made her feel bad. Like her and then her sister above her that were like of a similar hue, they were made to feel bad because their siblings were the range as well. Right, from the light to the dark.
Well, that's the thing.
And it was made very clear there was a difference, even though she was the more accomplished, she was more educated and so on. But she grew up having to be very forceful in how she communicated because in her household she had to speak up for herself. So and that's when I was really introduced to that on a more therapeutic level, was with that particular woman and how she was experiencing. And she did not come to therapy because of that, but it's part of how she was shaped You know, and raising her boys that are black kids. There's Spanish speaking. The dad is African American, but they're black children. They're walking down the street just seeing black children. Yeah, but they have a Latino, descent.
That's what I'm saying. So like it's hard to take a look at that, and that's kind of where the evolving thing, where both things can be true. We would give our lives to each other, but there's that little thing in there that
what with each other?
Give our lives for each other. If one of us were in it.
I wouldn't give my life for you.
No, not for you, pendejo. I'm talking about my family. What the hell?
I'll give.
Come on, man. Stay on.
I'll give my an orange to you.
No,
I'll give an apple.
I don't want anything from you. I'm just saying, like, both things can be true. Like, we can love each other and also have that little animosity towards each other. That for what that part of that racial construct of bullshit.
Or just feeling like when I watched the documentaries or the podcasts that were geared towards Afro Latino identity, that they were made to feel like I should have straight hair, or I should have lighter skin. And
we talked about that.
Washing the brown off you, trying to wash the brown or straighten the hair till it like breaks out. And this is not just an Afro-Latino situation, but specifically, it was made very clear in those specific documentary and podcast, this is one of the common themes.
Yeah, I know. We even talked about this last week, where like when I was a kid, the big cut was like the DA, where you brush it back and you had the hair, whatever. I couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. So until
but go ahead.
I'm talking about the good part.
Yeah.
So, but then like flat tops and Gumbies came out.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, I can do this.
Right.
Now, it was a floppy one. I'm not even gonna sit here and tell you that it was like the straight up firm. Mm-hmm. It was the floppy one. But the whiter Hispanics had to put gel in their shit and like kind of straighten it up and like do a vanilla ice thing.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So I was like, oh, okay, I can do this, but I couldn't do that other thing. You know what I mean?
Straighter look. But then you realize you also had the pretty hair, right?
I had the good hair.
You had the good hair, pretty hair. And that's the thing, the language, right? The language is there for the African American. For anywhere that the African experience met the white supremacy, there's the proximity to whiteness. So if your hair is curlier, looser curl, or straight, then that's considered a pretty hair. Then you have my hair texture, which is what they call 4C hair, right? Which is like the coarsest hair.
Oh, you don't really have much hair now.
Yeah, because it ran off my head. He's trying to get away from me. He's like, what the fuck? Let me get away from his head, But and even just my own hair journey too, like feeling good about myself and so on. Growing up in a country that was 95% white.
Which country are we in? Oh, England.
Okay. England, yeah. So if you're in England, where 95% of the people are white,
that's where they come from.
And everything. That's right. That's where white comes from. So that's where they were created, and then they walked out into the world. But the idea is that I was saturated with European imagery and what was considered attractive, and as I got older and realized I don't look like that. And then it affected my self-esteem, and having to try to figure that out and detangle it. It took me all the way into like maybe college that I was able to kind of understand just through my own studies and recognize when you're being colonized by Europeans, it sets up a certain dynamic in that country, especially when there are Africans in those countries or black folks in those countries or been brought over to those parts of the world. So I think that when I'm watching the shows, that it's about celebrating all of you. You know what I mean? Because I think in the Latin community there is a certain separation of people, whether you're indigenous or not, only the indigenous people in my family or European or African, there is like a hierarchy that is there. What I was getting from what I was learning is I'm embracing all of myself, and I'm also acknowledging that there's this energy within the community that minimizes my African heritage in whatever it looks on myself, and usually it's how you look. Is basically how you look is what's wanting to be, is what makes you feel better or not so good about yourself, and it exists within the families. And I think that's where we got into clashing, because I'm like, it's just very obvious to me. And you're like, no, but in my family is this.
Well, because you know what it is? It's like I have to come to grips with the fact that there might be some bullshit going on in my family. Mm-hmm. And that's tough. That's like you gotta like, what do you mean? Like
It's like unspoken.
Like why? Like
Yeah,
you know, like
yeah,
I gotta go. I gotta go look at that.
Right,
You know, and,
right.
and you don't often want to look at that. That maybe there's things in your family that are not pretty or good.
Exactly.
And maybe somewhat racist and prejudiced. So
Absolutely. But like you said, all can be true. All things can exist on many levels.
Yeah.
But I think the idea of the Afro Latino identity is kind of pushing back against that, but also speaking it. Like, let's say your family is not really verbalized. Folks who are embracing the Afro Latino, they are speaking it. Whether it's within their family, within themselves, you're not gonna put me in a box. Like, it's so interesting because the Afro Latino is about not being in the box, right? But yet, you're railing against why do we have these separations in boxes? But it's a reaction to a box.
Well, you know what it is?
You're creating almost you're creating another box in a sense.
Yes.
But
that's my fear.
But here's the thing. This is the other piece I'm getting. It's a psychological thing. You're not actually separating, you're actually integrating. It's just that it's not like everybody's calling themselves Afro-Latino. And I think that's where you get kind of caught up, because it's not for everybody doesn't embrace that. Everybody doesn't go, oh, well, I'm Afro-Latino.
Oh, that's
but
true.
Those that do, the three common themes are, I am accepting all of myself. I'm acknowledging that there are prejudices and racial divides within the culture and within the family, and that I don't have to subscribe to those things anymore. But I can be just as Latin, and I can be just as embracing of my African heritage as anything
Absolutely.
else. But it's acknowledging that there's this theme in Latin America, and I think because I grew up around Puerto Ricans, that's where I heard this idea that we're not prejudiced. That's where I heard it. And I'm looking around like, oh, but then you want to marry a lighter skinned person, but you want straight.
Well, black people here do that too.
Oh
so.
no! This is again. It's all under the umbrella of white supremacy.
Yeah.
It's just we're talking about the Afro-Latino experience.
All right. So based on what you just said, like that's why I don't like the designation. Is because what does white supremacy does? It divides and conquers. It really it's really strategic, and it's planned out. And it's like, oh well, if you're this, then you can't get this much closer to me. But if you're this and that, maybe I will let you in the back door. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's literally a hierarchy to this shit. So that's why I don't like it. And then there has been I've seen, and I've only seen online.
Are you going to say progress?
No, only seen online in social media, like where there is a little animosity and like kind of indignant kind of attitudes towards Afro-Latinos and non-Afro-Latinos. So, and I never really openly saw that before. I'm not saying it didn't exist before,
right, but
I hadn't openly seen it until now. Cats throwing jokes in a different way, you know what I mean, in Spanish and stuff. So
I see what you mean. It's like you're replicating the divide and conquer, is basically what you're saying.
So for that, I don't like it. But as far as my affiliation, Afro-Latino all day, every day. But the same thing with Indio and same thing with Latin, period. You know what I mean? That's it for life. But I just don't like the dividing and conquering.
And then also, because unfortunately that race is a construct. It doesn't literally exist.
It does not exist.
But we're defining things using that language, which makes us even crazier, right? So I acknowledge that definitely. But we can't ignore that there's a community, or there's a sense of community where people are saying or using the language Afro-Latino, because people can
absolutely not.
People can feel that way but may not use that language, right? But
I understand that I'm on the rare side of the spectrum in that sense. Like I've seen a lot of people who've got no business really associated, like saying they're Afro-Latino and claiming it, and which is fine. I don't care who, says what, but for me, I just don't like the boxes. Don't like the boxes. I don't like the boxes. I don't like the division. So, I think we're going to end on that one.
Sure.
That note, because I got a feeling there's going to be a part 2.
Okay.
With some more facts and figures.
Right.
To kind of talk about what
maybe the history of it.
Yeah, I felt like we had to get this emotional part out of I had to get this emotional part out of the way.
Right.
So, I'm DJ MayDay.
I'm Professor S.
Thank you for listening to Sixth Stream Therapy. Comment.
Subscribe.
Comment.
hit the notification bell.
And like, please.
Please.
Oh, you gotta get that. You're never gonna fucking get it. I'm like,
But I did get it.
no, you gotta. You said notifications.
Notification bell.
Subscribe, comment, like.
No, you're talking about in order, but I'm just saying all the basics.
Oh yeah, yeah, we covered. Yeah.
Yeah, don't blame me.
You're right. Yeah. Right. You're right.
Don't throw me under the bus. I know when I'm under the bus.
I'll put you in the back of the bus.
Yeah, there you go. Hey. Oh my God.
I thought that was good.
You did?
You didn't think so?
Well, I didn't know if it was focused enough. I mean, I like how you put it at the end where you said, this is like part one, and because it's really about your feelings, right? I mean,
I think we had to get it out of the way because I felt like I wasn't okay.
okay, I got you. You felt more like comfortable talking about it this time around in a different way.
Yeah, and I had to get that off my chest. I didn't want to do that in the middle of facts and figures.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
All right, I'm gonna stop.